There we go. I think I am now. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our November the 9th agenda session. I now call this meeting to order. Could I have a motion on the minutes, please? We have a motion to approve the minutes with a proper second. If there are no objections, the minutes will stand as recorded. Just as a reminder, we will continue to be on our Zoom platform through the end of the month, but starting November, we do plan to discontinue the Zoom platform. However, we will continue to live stream as well. We do have an economic development committee this afternoon. Councilwoman Burrs, are you having some problems over there?
She was trying to be helpful, my computer just crashed.
Well, by the way, but you're still on the screen, so don't do anything. Yes, I can still see you. No, you're good so far. Okay. We do need an attorney-client privilege meeting this afternoon after we get through with economic development. So moving into our agenda, ordinances first reading this afternoon. Madam Clerk, would you please read 6A, please?
An ordinance to amend the operations budget ordinance number 13710, known as the fiscal year 2021-2022 operations budget ordinance, to amend section 6B so as to appropriate $38,640,506 from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021.
All right, any questions or comments concerning 6A? All right, seeing no lights, moving down into our planning items, 6B all the way through 6O. We covered last week in planning and zoning. And so I'll just ask if there are any questions or comments concerning any of these cases. Councilman Ledford.
Chairman, thank you. Just wanted to note items F and G, I believe we might have 2 deferral requests for this evening.
F and G. Okay. Very well. Councilwoman Burrs. Okay. All right. All right. Are there any other questions or comments concerning any of our other planning cases that will be up before us this afternoon? If not, we'll drop down to resolutions. 7D, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Community Development to accept, if awarded, a Department of Housing and Urban Development grant for rapid rehousing and supportive services for homeless families in the amount of $333,000.
All right. Any questions or comments? Seeing no lights, under finance, 7E, please.
A resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of an amount not to exceed $500,000 principal amount of the City of Chattanooga General Obligation Bond Series 2021A.
Any questions or comments? F,
A resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of an amount not to exceed 26 million principal amount of the City of Chattanooga General Obligation Refunding Bonds Series 2021B.
still seeing no lights. Under Human Resources, G, please.
A resolution authorizing the interim chief human resources office to renew the existing agreement with Onsite RX Inc. to provide on-site pharmacy services to include mail order and on-the-job injury medications for city employees, retirees, and dependents covered under the city's health plan for the second of 3 one-year renewal options for an annual service fee of $20.32 per employee per month, PEPM, in addition to purchasing prescriptions and over-the-counter products through Onsite RX Inc. at the cost of approximately $8.2 million per year and paying applicable sales tax at the approximate rate of $15,000 per year.
Okay, Councilman Ledford removed his light. Mr. Vice Chair, I think earlier at our morning meeting, there was an item on our agenda that we needed to defer, and I'm not seeing that at this time. And maybe that might be under our Economic Development Committee. Okay, we'll wait. Okay, all right, we'll wait till then. All right, under planning, 7H, please.
A resolution authorizing an abandonment of a planned unit development for property located at 1601 Eucalyptus Drive as detailed on the attached maps.
Go ahead and read I. Those are both together.
A resolution approving a special exceptions permit for a residential planned unit development for the property located at 1601 Eucalyptus Drive.
Okay. Any questions or comments concerning H or I? Good. Okay. Turning to our purchase items for this afternoon, does council have any questions regarding any of those items in our packet? All right, I'm not seeing any questions at this time. We can go back if we need to. November 16th, our 2-week agenda. Any questions or comments regarding our 2-week agenda? See if no one else has, Councilwoman Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Under Parks and Public Works, I just had a question about L, the resolution related to professional design services for water cannon improvements at Ross's Landing for $121,000. Wonder what improvements we can expect for $121,000.
Yes, Councilwoman. So the water cannons at the riverfront have been broken for some time. I'm going to let Donald speak to those and the repairs that are going to be made.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Councilman Hill. We have attempted to repair the cannons, and in several instances, we've had flooding on the river, which has damaged pumps and things like that. So we are bringing in this firm to re-engineer how it's designed so we won't keep running into problems.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's good. All right. Any other questions or comments or questions on our 2-week agenda? I do want to bring to the council the attention of 6A, our judges' pay. I had asked, and I'm not sure that I'm quite ready to vote on this next week, but I had asked HR to do a pay study, and what I got back seemed to be more of a pay comparison to what other cities are doing around the state. What I'd really hoped for, and maybe I didn't make myself clear enough, was that they would actually do sort of a bench study to where they would go in and evaluate, you know, what a judge does, what this person does, what we felt like would be a comparable pay for the amount of work or the type of work that they do. So I don't feel like I really got what I was asking for. So I would really, I would like to wait to see, you know, maybe what a study like that would look like. Also, I feel like that voting on this at this time would sort of be voting on this in a vacuum. I think there are a broad spectrum of things that we need to look at concerning our city court that we would need to address. And I think, you know, looking at the judge's pay is just one part of that. So I don't feel comfortable moving forward with it at that time. At this time, that's just me. I do have some lights at this time. Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too had some light concerns. I think that the pay is just one part. I'm not against the pay issue. It's that it's just one part of a total picture. I think we need to be looking at the broader picture. For instance, we elect a judge every 8 years. The only reason we do that is a long, long time ago, it was sort of tied to Sessions Court. That's no longer true. We're totally separate. And I really think the election of a city judge should be every 4 years. And I think for budgetary concerns and every aspect, we should be looking, I believe that's part of the charter, Madam Attorney. So is Chris here? Hey, Chris, let me ask you a question. I know you're looking at the charter, you're looking at a lot of things.
Yes, ma'am.
When will you have pieces like that that are antiquated, they're anachronisms? When will that be voted on instead of, or brought to us for a vote? That's a better way to say it.
Yes, we don't currently have any plans for charter changes to be brought to the council at this time. I think that some will come up next year. We've not discussed any charter changes related to city court or changing the term of city court yet, or at all.
Oh, okay.
And if we do go to a 4-year term, obviously we can never have state jurisdiction with a 4-year term.
I'm sorry.
We
What?
can't have we can never get state jurisdiction back if we have less than an 8-year
Well,
term.
do we want state jurisdiction back?
I'm not saying yes or no on that.
Yeah.
It's up to this body if you want to ask for it, but just as an FYI, you have to have an 8-year term for state jurisdiction.
Okay, I think that the state has made it pretty clear that we don't have state jurisdiction, and there's a good chance it'll stay that way. However, we're held to an 8-year term, and we go along with county elections, which makes no sense at all. And so I'm thinking that that's something that needs to be overhauled pretty quickly, even if that's just a piece of looking at the charter, because it may take forever for us to look at the charter. I think that the discussion has brought up some really interesting aspects. So I was just curious about that. So given that, thank you, Chris. So
I'll look into it for you.
yeah, given that response, Mr. Chair, I think there are too many things to look at. The other thing is this is a budgetary issue. This wouldn't even happen until the discussion of our next budget. So because there are too many things hanging out there, I would like for us to look at the judge's issue, city court issue as a whole before we decide to pick pieces that that we want to vote on now. I think that's out of sync. And so I'm not ready to vote. Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. What I've consistently and here on council is that when a white woman tears are expressed, we often fall to what that person have to say and yield to those tears. And I'm saying that to move on to this issue about the ordinance, although Councilwoman Burrs made some great points, the ordinance and our role for city council, according to the state law, is our job to set the pay for the city court judge. It is an elected seat. It has nothing to do with what's in the charter. It has nothing to do with how many years that they serve as a judge. It has nothing to do with the department that, for the city courts. It has nothing to do with that. It has all to do with the pay that we're supposed to do. It also, going back to what our duties are, we consistently keep placing those duties into the wheelhouse of other people to do. It's not up to HR to set the pay. It's up to city council to set the pay. It's not up for Chris and his job duties to bring us legislation around amending our charter. We're supposed to create it or work with our city attorney or whomever to do it. Now, we also have a MOU with UTC. So if we're wanting to have further research, I would ask, instead of trying to place it on the wheelhouse of HR, and Brent and everybody else have so adequately said, they most definitely don't want to play a role in that deciding factor, because they too also understand that that falls in our lap to dictate the pay. It's about not having general sessions provisions, which we gave up. And I heard the bone that Councilwoman Burrs placed that, oh, well, surely it will remain the same. So if we're not willing to have general sessions provisions, therefore the city court judges should not be getting paid what a general sessions judge will make. Now, I can yield, and for the sake of the chair and your ask for further research, what I ask only is that we place it with UTC. We're paying them, have them for your questions or whatever that you would like to be researched, and UTC provide us with that information. Now, this, well, from a budget perspective, we have to have this done or decided before August the 31st of 2022. That's next year. We may not even have the budget or whatever done, but it doesn't matter because it's an elected position. I get it. I want to make $180,000 too as a city council person. I don't have certain provisions to act accordingly to what my mayor will act as. But according to the law of what our duties or what we're supposed to do, that's this ordinance very well fits that. It's not talking about the department. It's not talking about the take-home cars. It's not talking about what's going to happen because we're eliminating one of the courts. It's none of that. It's in line with what we're supposed to do as council people, and that's to set the pay of our judges. So I would like to move forward with it. If it does not pass, then I'm cool with that. If it does pass, then that's another thing. Or we could table it until we get further research, but within the next 30 days, we need to be moving forward with it. And I mean, I would also add that in the future, Councilwoman Burrs, I heard it, that's leaders work together, right? So if there was any other concern, a dire concern outside of what you addressed last week or last 2 weeks for the council meeting, you could have, I'm here, I'm available. You have access to all my contact information that we could have worked in sync to have these things addressed before you just laid it out once again about, the way that you feel. But we can't keep holding up pieces of legislation because you don't agree with something. And if you're not willing to try to figure out how we can work together to move it forward. So with that being said, Chair, I'm willing to work with my colleagues and we can table this so we can get further research. But again, I would like for it to not be in the wheelhouse of our HR department. I would like for it to be sent to UTC so they can further research it. And hopefully in the future, Councilwoman Burrs, that you and I can find a way that we can work together, because quite often I find myself scaling
Well-
back to support you. And I would like for once for you to be able to support what I'm trying to do.
Councilwoman,
Thank you,
let's
Chair.
have that discussion at another time. I'd like to focus at this time just on the judges' pay and on this piece of legislation. The only reason I suggested HR is because when we restructured our staff several years ago, they did do a sort of a bench study to determine, what their roles were to make them coincide with every other position in the city. And that's the only reason I suggested HR. I have no problem with UTC doing a study to I guess my concern at this point is I'm not sure I have the knowledge to know where to set the pay. And I think the second thing is, what do we tie it to? Do we determine as a council when to give an increase in salary, or do we link it to some other position salary, so that we're not having to this body vote every 8 years on setting the salary? That may be the desire of this body to do. I don't know, is to set the salary every 8 years, but that's just something that we need to think about when we disjoint the judges' pay from General Sessions Court. Then we need to determine as a body how we address it going forward in pay increases. And UTC may have a way to look at that and determine maybe what the best way to look at that. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that it's not our responsibility to set the judges' pay. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I need some more information in order to make that decision. Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you. I admire your energy on this, and you've put a lot of energy into this. But just to set the record straight, on 3 or 4 times, and I believe we have the recordings, I have brought this up. I've been concerned about city court and about looking at the picture as a whole and not piecemeal. I don't know that I disagree with you about the pay. I think that as we go forward and as the mayor is redoing all areas of government, this is something that's been sorely overlooked for a very long time. And it's something that we as forward-thinking people should look at as a whole. So I respect what you're saying, but let's not misquote the truth. Thank you.
Let's move on. I think we've discussed the judges' pay at this point pretty thoroughly. Are there any other questions or comments on our November the 16th agenda? If not, let's move on to future considerations. Anything on our future consideration that you have a question or comment on? Councilwoman Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I have a short-term vacation rental to talk about. It's number 1A, slated for the November 30th agenda. I have spoken with the applicant. We'd like to move that back 2 weeks, please, to the 14th of December. And the applicant is going to reach out to the neighborhood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Joda, would you make sure that our future considerations reflect December the 14th, please?
Will do. Thank you.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, under the mayor's office coming up, this mayor's appointment of a Brent Goldberg, has that been thoroughly vetted? So we don't have any issues? They've done a considerable background check and check.
I don't know if it was considerable enough.
I think one thing that we do need to note, never mind. It does say effective January 1st. I got you. I think we did change that, correct? Okay. All right, you good, Councilman? Okay. All right, any other questions or comments on our future considerations? All right. I'm not seeing any at this time. We do not have any departmental reports. Is there anything else that needs to come before this body at this time before we move into Economic Development Committee? Anything else that needs to come before this body before we move into Economic Development? Seeing no lights, I will now turn the chair over to Councilwoman Coonrod for our Economic Development Committee.
We can get approval of the minutes. Thank you. And Karen, if you'll read resolutions 7.
A resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract for sale and purchase with Melvin R. Standiford and wife Kimberly D. Standiford and substantially the form attached for the acquisition of 932.34 square feet and for a temporary construction easement of 774.47 square feet on a portion of the property located at 5014 Creekside Preserve Drive, further identified as tax parcel number 110FC035, and to execute all documents necessary to complete the closing transaction for a total consideration of $37,500, with closing fees not to exceed $500,000 for a total amount not to exceed $42,500.
Vice Chair Smith, you have any questions? Vice Chair Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification and for the record, the purpose of 932 square feet is for what?
Yeah, it is for easement area that we need for wastewater infrastructure.
Okay, so there is infrastructure being planned at this, so this is just going to be the easement to assist.
That's right.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping to hear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mhm. B, please.
A resolution authorizing the Administrator of Economic Development to award up to $40,000 in home program funds to Habitat for Humanity of Greater Area Chattanooga to assist in the construction of a single-family house located at 235 Canary Circle for affordable home ownership.
Good, Councilwoman Dotley. Okay. C, please.
A resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to collectively with Hamilton County enter into a lease agreement with the Chattanooga Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, Inc., and substantially the form attached for the lease of the building at 2 Aquarium Way, Suite 138, further identified as a portion of tax parcel number 135KA001, with the building to be used exclusively for the operation of a visitor information center for a term of 3 years with the option to renew for 2 additional terms of 1 year each at the consideration of $1 per year.
Good, Councilwoman. All right, thank you. All right, and if you will read next week's resolutions.
A resolution to make certain findings relating to the STEM logistics project to delegate certain authority to the Industrial Development Board of the City of Chattanooga and to authorize the mayor to enter into and execute an agreement for payments in lieu of ad valorem taxes.
Councilwoman Dodd. You good? Okay. C, please.
A resolution authorizing the interim administrator of economic development to enter into an artwork donation agreement and substantially the form attached with the River City Company to accept the Scramble artwork installation valued at $553,073 with a leftover project contingency fund in the amount of $57,827.65 designated towards the Public Art Maintenance Fund.
Good, Councilwoman Dodd. D, please.
A resolution authorizing the interim administrator of economic development to enter into an artwork donation agreement and substantially the form attached with Sound Corps to accept the mural Fives Resonance valued at $14,100 with leftover project contingency funds in the amount of $2,350 designated towards the Public Art Maintenance Fund.
E, please.
A resolution authorizing the interim administrator of economic development to award up to $40,000 in home project funds to the Habitat for Humanity of Greater Chattanooga area to construct a house located at 219 Canary Circle for affordable homeownership contingent upon the project being approved through the established application review process.
Councilwoman Elf, please.
A resolution authorizing the interim administrator for economic development to amend a home project agreement previously approved by City Council, Resolution number 30849, by increasing the award to the Chattanooga Community Housing Development Organization by $30,000 for a total award of $146,136 to construct a house at 119 North Willow Street for an income qualified household.
Any questions, Councilman Rhodes? G, please.
A resolution authorizing the interim administrator of economic development to amend a home project agreement previously approved by City Council, Resolution 30851, by increasing the award to the Chattanooga Community Housing Development Organization by $24,000 for a total award of $151,086 to construct a house at 200 North Willow Street for an income qualified household.
Good. Okay. H,
A resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a first agreement to exercise option to renew with Missionary Ridge Neighborhood Association, Inc., in substantially the form attached for the lease of 36 Sheridan Avenue, identified as tax parcel number 156EB001.01, for an additional term of 1 year through December 16, 2022, for the amount of $1 per year.
thank you, Ms. Karen. I don't know, we're gonna have a presentation from Jermaine on a pilot for Steam Logistics.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Here we go. So today coming before you is a request for a pilot for a company called Steam Logistics. They are a third-party logistics firm here in Chattanooga, born and bred here in Chattanooga, and we, with the Kelly administration, are recommending and support this pilot. And so I'll go through some slides. Today I am joined by several members of the team. So we have Jason Provancha, who is the CEO of Steam Logistics, along with Malcolm Harris, the Director of Hiring for Steam Logistics. We also have Colton Sadler, Steam Logistics General Counsel, and then Charles Wood and Steve Hyatt from the Chamber of Commerce are also here as well. And then we also have Todd Phillips, who will be working with the real estate team that will be redeveloping the building for this project. So some of these slides are going to be very familiar. These are slides that we presented in the past, but I just sort of wanted to go over and sort of remind the council of some of the goals and some of the processes that we have put in place regarding pilots. So for this particular pilot, Steam Logistics submitted an application for incentives to the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. Both the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, as well as TVA, have provided incentives to this project. And so we are at the phase of the project where local participation has been asked as well. The chamber also evaluated the request on behalf of the city and county, and both mayors, Mayor Kelly and Mayor Coppinger, both support the pilot. As part of this process, we heard from Councilwoman Dotley, as well as Councilwoman Hill and Mayor Kelly, about the need to have a public information process at the beginning. So as part of this process, we incorporated a public information meeting at the front end of the process, which we held last week during our regular meeting of the November Industrial Development Board. There was no public opposition at the meeting that we held last week. Just a reminder, some of the goals of the Kelly administration with regards to pilots. We want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to ensure that projects pass the but-for test, which the chamber has helped us to evaluate. We are continuing to include community benefits language in every pilot with respect to using local contractors as well as hiring locally. That community benefits language is in the agreement for this particular pilot. We will also continue to include language around the development of talent pipelines and workforce development opportunities for pilots as well. That language is also in this pilot. Last week, Jason and I had a chance to sit down with officials from UTC to discuss the development of a pipeline of talent from UTC to provide additional talent into Steam Logistics. The reason that we had that conversation is because it is a goal of the Kelly administration's
to make sure that we are retaining more of our college-educated talent here in Chattanooga so that we don't see a brain drain when these individuals graduate from college, either as undergraduates or as grad students, and then take the education that they've gained over 4 or 5 or 6 years in Chattanooga and move to other cities. So this opportunity and the opportunities that we are now evaluating with UTC is trying to figure out, one, how can we retain more college-educated talent here in Chattanooga by creating a talent pipeline directly into STEAM logistics. And then two, at the same time, we also wanted to be very intentional about making sure that we were providing opportunities for African-American graduates and graduates of color from UTC. Last year, we held what was called the Styles Hutchins Fellowship, where we had fellows from UTC who were African-American that came and interned here in the mayor's office. One of the things that they said was, as African-American students here at UTC, we often feel like we should go back home to our home cities outside of Chattanooga because we don't always feel like there are job opportunities or viable careers that are waiting for us when we graduate. And so our conversations with UTC officials last week were an attempt for us to begin to change that dynamic and to make sure that we were creating more talent pipelines directly into STEAM, directly into jobs that pay a livable wage, and that we were thinking about graduates of color in the process of doing so. And so, as is the case with every pilot, this pilot also collects economic development lease payments that go to the Industrial Development Board. As a reminder, we use those economic development lease payments. We sort of recycle that money and we use it and provide it in the form of grants to small businesses that apply for grants. So when small businesses, when you hear about grant programs that the city of Chattanooga offers through the IDB, the way that those programs are funded, for example, the Save a Lot that's in East Chattanooga, the way that those programs are funded is because we take those economic development lease payments and then we move them over into different accounts and make those available for small businesses. And so we want to ensure that we continue to offer community benefits with every pilot that we do. So this is some additional benefits of economic development projects, especially of this sort. So this is a targeted industry for Chattanooga. This is what Mayor Kelly describes as a traded cluster. The logistics industry is a big industry in the Chattanooga area. And so we want to continue to grow that industry. We want to continue to foster it, nurture it, and defend it from being recruited or from having those companies recruited to other cities. There are other cities that are trying to grow their logistics industries. Minneapolis, Nashville, Birmingham. These are all cities that are trying to grow their own respective logistics sectors. And so we want to do everything that we can to defend that sector and continue to attract companies here to Chattanooga and grow those companies here in Chattanooga. The other additional benefit that we see is that we can use certain economic development projects to target blighted and abandoned properties here in our city. Today's pilot is a prime example of that. The John Ross building has been sitting vacant in downtown Chattanooga for a number of years. It has been an eyesore in the middle of our downtown, right at the intersection of 4th, Market and Broad Streets. And this project would seek to put that building back into redevelopment and to gain additional property tax revenue for it. And then the other thing that we have to keep in mind is that in addition to targeting blighted areas, this is also an opportunity for us to bring an anchor tenant back to that section of downtown. I'll talk about this a little bit more later in the slides, but we need more people in that section of downtown so that we can continue to support the small businesses that are down there. As companies have turned to more remote workers, some of our small businesses have really struggled in certain parts of our community, especially in that section of downtown, because there just aren't as many people walking past their businesses every day. So this is an overview of the project. So over the span of 9 years, which is what this pilot is, which is what the term of this pilot is, we are looking at a $115 million total economic impact. It creates a national headquarters right in our downtown. The estimated abatement of property taxes during this pilot period is just over $500,000. But again, the estimated economic impact over a 9-year period is $115 million. STEAM Logistics will continue to pay all school taxes and all stormwater fees. And again, we get to see the John Ross building reactivated in downtown Chattanooga. So how does this pilot compare to other pilots? So only Amazon and VW had more initial jobs with their pilots. Only Wrigley and Company had higher wages. That was a pilot that incentivized jobs at the $69,000 a year mark. This pilot also has a tougher clawback when it comes to the requirements of job creation. So we raised the threshold of compliance from 80% to 90%. And it is always a benefit when we have a company that was born and raised here in Chattanooga, growing in Chattanooga, that we can support. And so, as I mentioned earlier, our downtown Chattanooga is seeing a changing landscape. I mean, we traditionally, prior to the pandemic, we had big companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield and Unum and EPB and TVA that did not have as many employees that were working from home, but that now have large segments of their workforce working from home that are no longer downtown, no longer supporting the small businesses downtown. When people aren't working in our downtown core, that means that they aren't shopping at businesses downtown and they're not eating lunch or dinner at local restaurants. And so this is really an opportunity for us to repivot and for us to look to the future at a company that is growing, at a company in a different sector, and to see that company really start to reinvigorate our downtown core. So as I mentioned before, Jason and I had a great conversation with Dr. Shawani Howard-Baptiste from UTC last week, where we could begin to talk about recruiting talent from UTC to come work for STEAM. Retaining college-educated students is important. Countywide, as we look at our economic development prospects for our future, the future is going to be workforce development. There are approximately only 40 to 41% of our of adults across the county over the age of 25 that have a post-secondary credential. So if we can keep more college graduates in our city as they graduate, then that helps us to push up that number so that we see more adults that have college degrees. And then STEAM doesn't necessarily just hire people with bachelor's degrees or graduate degrees. They are also open to having conversations with Chattanooga State for people who have started college and who may have associate's degrees. So again, as we look to the future, it is important to the Kelly administration that we continue to be aggressive about pushing up wages. Over the past several years, the city of Chattanooga has seen an increase in wages across the board. Our average salary right now is $22.71 per hour. The median hourly wage is $18.20. Those are wages that have risen. And we will continue to invest in jobs of the future that pay a livable wage because we believe that, and let me just go back here for just a second. We believe that every time we create a job with a livable wage, we are creating a new opportunity for a person here in Chattanooga. We are creating new opportunities for people to be able to go out, enjoy our city, afford a home, and really sort of invest in our city and help our city to grow. And so, you know, I've been asked about labor force challenges, and Jason can sort of come up to talk a little bit more about some of the success that STEAM has had in hiring. But it is very true that in this economy and this market, sort of as we look at a post-pandemic recovery, there are a lot of unfilled positions that we see across the county. 9,100 jobs, to be exact, by our recent estimates from data that we have, are currently unfilled. But if you also look at the slide, the median wage for those jobs is $31,200, okay? That is well below the median wage for the city, and that's well below the average wage for the city. And so that makes it difficult for lots of people who get those jobs to be able to afford housing and the other needs that they have. So we believe that it is important for the Kelly administration to continue to put as much pressure as possible on wages to go up because we believe that makes for a healthier community. And the unfilled positions that we are seeing is a national trend. It is not Chattanooga specific. If you look at labor force participation rates, there are far fewer people that are in the labor force today than there were prior to the pandemic. And that is something that we're seeing across the state of Tennessee. Davidson, Knox, and Shelby counties all have job openings that are well above the number that we're seeing here in Chattanooga. And I expect that will continue. However, those cities, Nashville, Knoxville, and Memphis, are not being shy about continuing to recruit economic development projects, and neither should we. So the way this pilot is structured is it is structured just like every other pilot that we've done. There is one caveat here, though, in that, remember, this building is currently privately owned. So the property taxes that are currently in place cannot be abated. All right, so those property taxes will remain in effect for the duration of the pilot. But for the improved value of the building, we are looking at the first year of the pilot payment would be 0% of property taxes, second year 25%, and then it graduates up to 40% and then 50% in every year thereafter. Again, State Logistics is required to pay all of the taxes to support the local school system, as well as all stormwater fees, and they will pay the lease payments to the respective industrial development boards. So here's sort of a breakdown of what we're seeing right now with the building. So right now, there's approximately $29,000 worth of property taxes that comes in annually for the John Ross building. And here's a picture of what the John Ross building currently looks like. So over the span of 9 years, we're looking to collect approximately $264,000 worth of property taxes. And Charles will talk a little bit more about this when he comes up. This building has been vacant and abandoned for at least 10 years, probably longer. So it is not beyond reason to think that it may not be redeveloped for another 5, 7, or 10 years. But this is what we're looking at in the event of not doing a pilot and not having an opportunity for this company to use this building as its national headquarters. So again, we could look at these numbers, and over the span of the next 9 years, we would be looking at collecting about $264,000 in revenue. Option 2 is we could collect way more revenue, closer to $600,000. We could get a new national headquarters here in Chattanooga. We could get $115 million of investment in our local economy over 9 years. We could get $11.2 million worth of investment in the building and 400 new jobs that pay an average wage of $56,000 per year. The company would continue to pay the special assessment for as part of the business improvement district. Councilman Ledford, I know you were concerned about that, so I wanted to make sure that we address that. And we will also, and the company is also, the $592,677 that you see there does not include the $126,000 worth of economic development payments that the company would also be responsible for. So, you know, in the scenario where we do the pilot, we're looking at well over $700,000 of addition, $700,000 in revenue compared to $264,000 if we don't do the pilot and we walk away. So with that, I will take any questions, but I would ask that we hold on the questions until we have the other presentations. So I would like to invite Charles to come up and to provide another brief overview, and then we'll invite Jason and Malcolm to come up to talk as well. Okay. So Mr. IT, if I could get the next presentation up.
This may be a little bit of death by PowerPoint, so I apologize for that. But I'll run through quickly. All right, perfect. I think Jermaine covered most of this. One thing I would highlight is the company currently has about 350 employees that are based here in Chattanooga. And the company CEO talked through a little bit more about what that looks like, as well as their other locations in Birmingham, and then one other. So really quick, so project again, 400 jobs, average wages of 56,000, and taking down 60,000 square feet in downtown. That would be the largest office lease, certainly in the last, I think, 10 years that we've seen in downtown Chattanooga. So definitely pretty substantial. 9-year pilot term, I'd say 5-year hiring timeline. If you think about timeline to be able to have that facility improved and have room to kind of grow those jobs over time. And then the contract is between the city, the county, Steam Logistics, and then 329 Market LLC, which is the entity that has the building under contract. Standard declining abatement schedule, as we've seen. And then one thing to note is, again, pilot agreements, the way these are structured, there are no dollar amounts that are written in there as far as how much money is abated, because it all comes back and is based on the assessed value of the building. So that's why we focus on kind of the abatement schedule in terms of percentages. And then clawback in the case of noncompliance, which Jermaine touched on. So the value of the incentive is roughly $500,000, total impact about 114 million. New fees paid into the city as part of the economic development fee is 126,000. And then new property taxes over that 9-year window is just shy of 340,000. So I thought this would be helpful for you to see what this looks like. As Jermaine mentioned, the city receives roughly $29,000 a year. This chart kind of lays that out. And if we think about this, I've kind of had a conversation before with someone. I said, this is really about a tax phase in, right? So this is not, again, kind of for the public, this is not where the budget of the city is impacted negatively, where cash is coming out of a budget center. And so this is what it looks like with the new real property tax revenue that comes into the city during that 9-year period. And so you can kind of see as it scales from 0 in the first year up to a 50% abatement by year 4, what that looks like, right? So effectively, you're more than doubling the revenue per year that the city has, basically by year 3 with the new real property revenue. And then this adds on the economic development fee on top of that to get an understanding of what the revenue stream looks like. So the reality is year 1 of the pilot, the city is actually increasing its revenue stream because of the economic development fee. And this is what it looks like when you take it out to the 10th year when the pilot expires. So you see basically a new bump going up to 90,000 in addition to that 39,000 a year in property tax revenue. So hopefully this is a really good visual as you're kind of thinking about what happens with a pilot agreement. And I would say, and I know there's been some conversations around new tax rates. And so the new tax rate is applying to that $29,000. That is a result of the new tax rate for year 2021. And as is the case with this tax phase in as well. So this is new money coming into the city. Obviously, the building doesn't get redeveloped. This is what that looks like. So just as a quick reminder. I think this is really a strategic opportunity for us in economic development. And Jermaine mentioned this a little bit, but so this is a focus on white collar jobs that are high wage in downtown in a target industry sector. And while I will not name this community that was in Chattanooga in September, we had a community visiting us and visiting our logistics companies in Chattanooga, basically because they're trying to grow a logistics industry in their community, right? So the way, being a guy from Mississippi, the way I would describe that is our chickens are their chicken dinner, right? So taking care of our chickens so that they don't end up as someone else's chicken dinner, this is how you take care of your existing companies. This will be the largest job announcement since Volkswagen's expansion in 2019. Again, puts the jobs in downtown in an area that's unfortunately seen a number of businesses close in that area, and then redevelops a rather tired looking facility. And so this is kind of a real quick image of kind of what this looks like today. And then it's going to be exactly the same spot with the rendering for the project. So pretty substantial impact on downtown and on that core area of 4th and Broad and 4th and Market. Again, community partnership around this. So there's a number of community benefit components that were added into the last pilot agreement that this council approved. They have been added into this as well. And we view this as really a great opportunity to kind of continue to send that message when we're working with companies of these are priorities for us. These are priorities for our community. We want them to be priorities for you. And so I guess, do you have to switch to the next presentation? Okay. I'll let Jason come up. Thanks so much. All right.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Jason Provancha. I'm the CEO of Steam. I have a couple of my colleagues here with me, and we can all speak to anything you'd like us to. But I thought I would really just kind of get started by trying to give you a sense of what our business is and what we're trying to do. I think that would be more complementary to what you've already heard, rather than trying to rehash all these benefits of this project. So I'll kind of skip over a couple of these sort of marketing oriented slides and really want to kind of tell you our story. So just a little timeline over the past 9 years or so that we've been in business. Our business was really born out of Access America Transport. Some of you may be familiar with that company. Access America was a similar business. It was a third-party logistics company like us that started in the early 2000s and then grew substantially over about a 12-year period before selling to Coyote Logistics, a firm out of Chicago, who then a year after that sold to UPS. They still have a presence here and are still active in our community, but not headquartered here. To explain third-party logistics, just in a very general sense, a kind of crude way to put it is that we are a travel agent for freight. So we don't own any equipment. We own 0 trucks, 0 planes, 0 ocean vessels. But what we do is we match up companies that need to ship goods, either internationally or domestically, with companies that can carry those goods. And so it's brokerage, for lack of a better term. And so if you were to come to our office, and I would invite all of you to do that at any point that you'd like, you would see a lot of screens and a lot of people that looked like they were sitting on an equities trading floor. And it's just electronic movement of freight all over the world. And one of the reasons that we're having such success right now is that we've taken a little bit of a different approach in our industry. The prevailing model is typically to either focus in a very specific domestic orientation. So either you're really focused on moving freight over the road in North America on trucks, or you're an international freight forwarder, which means that you're moving ocean containers across various continents, either over the ocean or via air. And very infrequently does anyone try to do both of those things. We were sort of forced to do that in some ways. When we started Steam, the initial strategy was to start it to get Access America into the international market. And so shortly after we started the company, of course, as I mentioned, Access America sold to Coyote, and we then, a few of us sort of got together at Steam to focus entirely on international. And for the next 7 years, we were in a non-compete with Coyote to stay out of that domestic business. So we had to go figure this international thing out. And I think we made every mistake in the book about 3 or 4 times, and we finally started to gain some traction. And so over the years, we did that. And then just this past April, the non-compete with Coyote expired, and we were able to get back into the domestic side. So we sort of had this burn the ship moments way back when, had to go figure out this other thing, and almost died trying. And then as we figured that out, we were able to come back in from a position of growth and strength and layer in this other part of the business that we knew very well and had a lot of experience in. And so by virtue of that, we've been able to build this really interesting, very uncommon business in an industry that is about $990 billion worldwide. So it's a massive industry. We're growing very quickly within it. And that's really kind of the reason why is we've got this really interesting model that is really hard to replicate. And this gives you a little bit of a sense of some of the things that have happened along the way. Just this year, we opened 2 other offices, one in Minneapolis back in February, and then opened up our Birmingham office this summer. And this is a visual of those offices. Right now, we are next door to the John Ross building. So if you know where the Lifestyle Center is down on Market Street, it's right next to the sports barn. We are now we have the 2nd floor of that building and part of the 3rd floor. And then Minneapolis, we have 20 to 25 people. Is that right? 20? 25. So we have 25 people in Minneapolis and maybe 8 or 10 in Birmingham. They're relatively new and just kind of getting off the ground. But for context, when I was at Access America, we had plus or minus 550 employees, and 150 of them were in Minneapolis and about 75 of them were in Birmingham. So we sort of have connections within those markets historically. This is just a visual of our headcount growth going back to November of last year. As I mentioned, we've been scaling very quickly. And so we have added roughly a little over 300 jobs really since January. So a lot of growth happening this year. Most of those jobs have happened here. So we've added those other offices, but as I mentioned, we're looking at maybe 35 hires outside of Chattanooga. So the bulk of that's been happening here, which of course we're very happy about. And in terms of how we're finding our team, obviously a lot of companies are hiring. It's a very competitive marketplace. Malcolm leads our recruiting efforts, and he has one other person on his team. We're about to hire another full-time recruiter. So we're doing it through connections in universities. We're hiring a lot out of school. We're hiring within the industry. We have a good reputation. So we've had a lot of interest coming from our competitors. And then we've been hiring people that have traditionally had no connection to transportation. And that's been a bit of our strategy to maybe change the profile of what a transportation company or a logistics company looks like or sounds like. And so we're trying to open it up to folks that maybe didn't have any exposure to it, or whatever exposure they had maybe was maybe not as positive as it could have been. So we spend a lot of time doing that. One of the ways that we have been able to really grow is to put a tremendous focus on diversity. And this kind of goes back to what I just said about trying to expose our industry to people that may not have ever had familiarity with it, or maybe not a real positive familiarity with it. So traditionally, our companies like us are not very diverse. And Malcolm and I have been working really hard to figure out ways that we can buck that trend. I mean, when you are faced with these things, you can either say, well, I'll throw my hands up and that's sort of the way it is, or you try to push against it. And so we've been doing that, really for the better part of about 24 months. We've always sort of had this desire to build a diverse workforce, but I would say the last 2 years we've gained a lot of traction. And so right now, 30% of our team are women, which is a very high number in comparison to sort of the industry at large. And then over 20% of our team are people of color. And then you'll see this third note here that 10% speak another language. So we're an international company. We want to have a diverse workforce that represents the clientele that we serve. And this is one of these things that you never sort of find the finish line, but we feel like we're making really, really good progress around opening this industry up to a much broader group of people. These are our maxims. We spend a lot of time talking about culture at STEAM. We spend a lot of time figuring out how we want to kind of architect this business. We have the belief that culture is either by design or by default. And when it's by default, it's usually not very good. And so we've been really thinking a lot about how do we build an organization that we feel very good about, that we can sort of embrace these diverse ideals and create an environment that we have expectations on both sides. So when people join our company, we have expectations and guardrails that we want them to sort of fall into, and they're broad. There's plenty of room for individuality within that, but there are things that we believe in. And then likewise, it explains to them what they should expect from us and holds us accountable as a business. I had to get Malcolm in here. Just some of the, we've gotten a lot of awards around great places to work. That again goes back to culture. We spend a lot of time thinking and talking about that. So I just wanted to include a little bit about that. We are certified as a great place to work and have been on a number of those types of lists. So I think that's my last slide. I'm sure there's questions for any one of us. And I'll stay for a second if you have questions for me, or if you have something you want to direct to the rest of the crew, we can do that too.
Thank you. Councilwoman Dudley.
Yes, I do have a few questions, and I'm asking these for the record. I know some of them have been covered. I just want to make sure that they are addressed. My first question is regarding taxes. Given that there was just a recent tax increase, what is the justification for allowing this tax abatement or tax phase in?
Yeah, so I'll take a swing at that. So so there's a couple of things that we should be thinking about. Number one, when we, the Kelly administration, decided to hold the tax rate higher, we basically did so for one big reason, which was to raise employee salaries so that we could continue to support police officers, firefighters, public works employees. Because we believe that we should provide competitive, livable wages for City of Chattanooga employees. But the City of Chattanooga should not be the only organization that is promoting and providing livable wages. And so when we have an opportunity to court and to incentivize a company that is looking to create 400 jobs, a new national headquarters with jobs that pay an average wage of $56,000 a year, we believe that that is a value that we should continue to advocate for. This is all about investment. And whether the Kelly administration had decided to hold the tax rate higher or not, we as a community have to figure out when we are going to make investments that further our economic development goals. We believe that this is the type of investment that we should make. I will be candid and say that at the same time that we were considering this pilot, we got a request for another pilot from another company, and the chamber recommended against it. And we in the administration felt that it was not the right pilot to do because of the fact that the wages weren't high enough and because of the fact that the overall jobs number wasn't high enough. Now, I won't go into the details about who that company was because I don't think that that's appropriate. However, I'm happy to give you all an update offline as to the specifics of that. But again, for us, this is about making key investments and investing in the people of Chattanooga and in our workforce. As I said earlier, we believe that our job is to, as public servants, provide opportunities for all of Chattanoogans and to provide the best opportunities. So if we can create 400 more jobs and provide people with great opportunities to get paid a living wage, we believe we should do that.
Okay, thank you, Jermaine. My next question deals with sustainability. So given the current increase in logistical needs, primarily due to the pandemic, once the global economy adjusts, do you foresee any issues with sustaining this level of growth?
I'll let Jason answer that.
That's a great question. We don't have real concerns about that. And the reason is, obviously right now, we all know that the supply chain on a global basis is in a certain amount of turmoil. As difficult as that is for our customers, it does help us. We are a third party, so disruption aids us in helping to solve big problems. And so what we're trying to do right now is use this market activity as a way to reinvest in the company and continue to grow through it. And what we think will happen is we'll reach a level of scale before this market transitions. And we think it's going to be about like this until the end of next year. We think we'll have reached enough scale that then we'll be able to kind of shift our focus and optimize the business, continuing to hire, but at a slightly different rate. So we actually think that these 400 jobs, many of them will come out of the gates in greater volume in the first couple of years. And then I think the number is conservative. I think 400 jobs is a conservative number, just to be clear. But I think it'll ramp quickly and then it will taper off some in the back half of this sort of 5-year term, if that makes sense. And what's going to happen is, right now, the industry is expanding dramatically. Everybody's doing really well. And as that starts to taper, it's going to be about duking it out for market share. And by way of comparison, Access America, we doubled the size of that business in 07, 08, 09, and 10 in the worst economy, any of us have ever been a part of. So we think we have the formula to push right through that.
Okay, thank you. My next question has to do with the jobs themselves. I know based on your presentation, you have roughly 414 jobs currently. So what category of jobs will STEAM primarily be hiring for these positions?
So right now, a lot of sales and revenue producing jobs are kind of the leader for what we're trying to do. So as we grow the business, we're trying to pump investment back into more revenue producing employees. But with that comes all the other team members that you have to support that. So in any given week, we had 22 people start yesterday, and we have 24 slated to start next Monday. And it's probably about half of those would be revenue producing, and then the other half would be anything from operations to accounting, to support staff. And so even though we're sort of leaning into the revenue side as a way to continue to grow, all of these other jobs have to come with it to support it, or you can't make it work. So it's a combination of both, but I don't want to skirt the fact that a lot of it's revenue producing in terms of the strategy itself.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is more of a bigger picture question. On a larger economic scale, why should we be focusing on these type of office or white collar jobs?
Thank you. That's a really good question. And so I've had this conversation, kind of the opposite conversation around production workers that tend to make less money. But I think it's the same dynamic for that question. And that's that we need to make sure that Chattanooga is growing jobs that support multiple skill levels, right? Not everyone's going to be a software engineer. So you've got to create jobs that are going to offer opportunities for people that have a lower skill level, lower education attainment, that kind of thing. At the same time, creating jobs that are white collar with higher average wages for college graduates is a way to continue to provide jobs for folks in that sector. And I would tell you a little bit of the data, to dig a little bit into the data that Jermaine mentioned around kind of the number of jobs that are out posted and that kind of thing. About half of those jobs that are posted basically fall within healthcare, food service, hospitality, and retail. And so if you think about that, most of those are going to be lower wage, lower skill jobs. And so for us, we want to make sure that we're also creating jobs that are going to be white collar jobs, that college graduates that are coming out of UTC or Covenant or wherever they may be coming from, that those opportunities are created as well. So I think it's making sure we're creating a balance. It's not leaning heavily. I have a colleague who works in a county outside of Nashville. They only want headquarter jobs. And so basically what they're saying is, if you can't go work for corporate headquarters, we kind of don't want you, right? So I think for us, we need to make sure it's a very diverse base of kind of skill sets and job opportunities for the community.
Thank you so much. Yeah, sure.
I also just wanted to explain, because we are in an office, I see the way you would sort of view this as a white collar job. First of all, I don't see too many collars at all on our team. They're usually in t-shirts. But I guess what I would say is that we love to have college graduates. We have a ton of team members that do not have a college degree. It's not a requirement. We have people with very little college background or none. And if they sort of check some other boxes relative to kind of mindset and ambition and things that we look for, that's okay. And so it's a pretty sort of big tent of opportunity that I think we can provide, relative to background and that kind of thing.
Thank you so much. I am in support of this pilot, but wanted to make sure I got my questions answered on the record. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you good, Councilwoman? Councilman Hester?
I think Councilwoman Dolly asked my question. I was wanting to know the breakdown of the potential positions that you guys are going to create. I think another concern I was thinking about as you were presenting, I imagine you have to be very aggressive in sales as far as to break the $56,000 plateau. Based on my number, I was
Sure. So,
figure some things.
So 56 is the average across all job types. The average sales job is actually 75. And that's average. So, you don't have to necessarily be that aggressive to meet that. I think I can count on one hand the number of jobs we have under 40,000. So they're all, in that, like I said, I think maybe on one hand, but I don't even know if we have any. So we're really kind of pushing it above that 40 mark. And again, 56 is across every job type, and then it moves into 75 when you get into sales.
Okay. Thank you.
You good, Councilman Hester?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jermaine, since you're up here, I just want to tell you, good job, really. This has been, to me, one of the best presentations for a pilot, and I've sat through a few that I've ever seen. You were thorough. You addressed the key concerns, and I referenced when we go back to Alstom. Thank you for that. Thank you for the hard work on the administration and also the applicant. We've addressed the but-for. We've addressed having an aggressive clawback that I think is very appropriate. You obviously met the criteria with blight. You addressed my CBID question, and I appreciate that very much. And the community partnership was a really key part of the presentation that spoke to me. The numbers, if I saw those numbers correctly, if you would confirm this, actually over time, the city creates more revenue.
That's correct.
And
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just simple math, and
Yes.
that was very good. I have not necessarily seen that in a presentation, so I want to thank you for that. Moving on, if I may ask Jason a couple of questions, and these are logistical questions. See what I did there? In the 400-ish jobs that are anticipated in this, will all 400 be located in that building, or will they be remote? Some be remote. I'll piggyback that with, will folks have parking? I mean, has any of that been, I mean, you're in logistics, so I'm sure you
Yeah.
figured that out.
Yes. So the first answer is everyone will be in that building,
Okay.
save for one or two here. And I mean, we are not a work from home shop. I mean, it doesn't really work for us. We will be in that building. And the only reason I hesitate is we have some like outside salespeople sort of scattered around the country, but that's not the core of the jobs that we're talking about. With regard to parking, we are actually about to shift the overwhelming majority of our parking to the Carter Garage right there by the climbing gym.
Okay.
So it's not in the presentation in terms of investment in the city, but I think you could look at that too. I mean, we're going to park 200 people in that building, in that parking garage minimum. And so that's another, benefit to the community, I think, as well.
Thank you. And one of the other interesting points that came across, and I appreciate Councilwoman Dotley's questions, they were spot on. In not requiring a college degree to work there, I'm assuming that there are training opportunities for entering into your facility, but also advancement opportunities. Is that ongoing in your environment?
Yes, we have full-time trainers on staff that both manage the kind of onboarding training that occurs, sort of you just got hired, let's get you ready to be on the floor training. And then they do ongoing training, beyond that. From an advancement perspective, we encourage movement within the organization, both horizontally and vertically. So if you want to really move up in sales, for example, we obviously want to help guide that effort. If you are in sales and you hate it and you want to move into operations, we would support that too. So I would say we have a lot of healthy movement in that way. And what we try to do is, especially when you're hiring someone out of college, they might think they know what they want to do and then they get into it and don't. And so if they're a good employee, you're trying to sort of help put them in the right seat on the bus and champion them a little bit into a role that they're going to thrive in.
Thank you for that. My last question is really, it doesn't have a bearing on my decision, but do you have childcare worked into your facility? And if you do, can you talk a little bit about your approach to childcare and or if it's even on the menu?
It hasn't been, and it hasn't been a situation that we've had to really address. A lot of our team are young, and many of them have not even gone down that path yet. And I would say that's probably the biggest reason that it hasn't really been sort of forced onto us to sort of sort through, because there hasn't been enough critical mass to have to address it. But as we mature, I would imagine we'll need to start thinking that through.
Thank you for that answer.
Sure.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No,
for
no,
that, but,
I just had never thought about it. So
yeah, it's something that I've tried to look at comprehensive when we look at processes and
Yeah.
projects like this. So thank you, Jason.
we
for
should
your-
probably be proactive about it. So now we'll have to start that conversation. So
That would be awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank you.
so much. Madam Chair, I
Thank you.
yield.
Okay. Councilwoman Hill.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Appreciate Councilwoman Dotley's questions as well. I have about 5 different things. First, Jermaine and Charles. I, to some extent, want to echo what Councilman Ledford said. I can really tell that you guys are listening, and I thank you for that. And I thank Mayor Kelly for making that a priority. It was terrific within this 40-page packet to have the minutes from the IDB meeting and to see what other public servants are asking and the answers that you provided to them, and to know what members of the public were there, what they did or didn't have to say. So we're making this process better, and that means a lot to me. So thank you. To that point about this process overall and improvements, I look forward to a day when we can make our community benefits language more meaningful. And I know that we have some preemptions related to that, but something that occurs to me is as STEAM and other groups are working, for example, to build bridges for local people to get jobs and local college graduates to get jobs, I wonder how we might find a person who wakes up every day to make sure that certain KPIs are being met. Because it's one thing to have a meeting early in this conversation, but the labor market is changing and education is changing so quickly that I think it's going to require ongoing support from our community educators to STEAM and to Pure Graphite to be able to really have a meaningful impact. So that, we're always improving. That would be something I'd love for you guys just to have marinating. Jason and Malcolm, thank you so much for the slide about your breakdown of 30% female, 21% non-white, and 10% bilingual or multilingual. I commend you for that. That's tremendous. Question somewhat like one that Councilwoman Dotley was asking, but a little bit more specific. As we see how people work and jobs that are automated, how do you see what you do changing in the course of this 9 years? What are some of the, you all embrace disruption within your industry. What disruptions do you see STEAM facing, and how might you be thinking about navigating that?
So it's been ongoing, and there are companies that we compete with who have raised a lot of venture capital. One in particular has raised over $1 billion, and they use some of that money in a lot of marketing around describing themselves as a digital transportation company, meaning they've built algorithms to match capacity with loads, and they promote it as it happens through artificial intelligence, and it's no touch freight. And that is Uber Freight is now in the domestic side. So they have a sort of a similar model. It's, hey, we have all these algorithms that are going to match up available loads with available trucks, and we can do more with less, and we can compress profit margins as a result. And so there's a lot of that kind of talk. We think that that is largely, it is a threat long-term, but we think that is largely overstated. And I think that particularly within this next 9 years, I don't see it as a substantial threat. And especially right now with what's happening with supply chain, it's so disruptive. I think it has really shined a light on the fact that when things get really hairy, you still need people to go solve these problems. And so we are not some archaic company that doesn't believe in technology. We do, but we also think about it in terms of technology enablement of our team as opposed to technology for the sake of it and automation, from end to end. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. When Pure Graphite was here, I was like, are we VHS or are we beta? What are we buying here? So Malcolm, thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm very pleased that this is the approach that not Pure Graphite, that you guys at STEAM have taken for your culture. I think that's great.
Thank you.
I do have a question that's specific to this agreement language. That is on page 4 of the agreement document. It's item number 6A about minimum requirements for jobs. And Charles or Jermaine, you all may be the ones to answer this. I was concerned about this in the Pure Graphite agreement as well, but it seems kind of specific to the company. So there's a sentence here in the last part of 6A that says, for purposes of meeting the minimum investment requirement and the minimum jobs requirement, STEAM Logistics may also include jobs created, and the companies may also include capital expenditures made at other facilities of the companies in the city in connection with the project. Can you speak to that a little bit and what that might look like? Because we're talking a lot about downtown renewal, but
Right. So the only jobs that count are jobs created within the city of Chattanooga.
okay.
And the only jobs that count are jobs created between October of 2021 and October of 2026. So that's all that language references.
Okay, so these jobs cannot go to the Minneapolis office or the Birmingham office.
Correct.
Okay, they have to stay here. All right,
Correct.
great. And then one final thing, as much to my colleagues as to everybody else here. I've been thinking, as you all are talking about the open positions in Chattanooga, and even Charles, you mentioned that half of them posted are lower wage jobs in some specific industries. I'm paying quite a lot of attention to this because what I've noticed is women are leaving the job market at a more rapid pace than they were before the pandemic. And childcare is increasingly difficult to find, and childcare workers are leaving at a rapid rate. I mean, it's easily $1,000 or more a month to have a child in childcare. But a childcare worker is paid about $21,000 a year. So it's a very broken system right now. And so it's great to me, Darren, that you asked the question about what's STEAM doing about child. I mean, part of why they aren't having babies yet is because they can't afford to have a baby and go to work, right? I mean, that's real. So just know that's something that's on my radar. And I'm glad that as a city with the One Chattanooga plan, that there is an intentional focus on how we become an investment ready city as it relates to early childhood care, because it's a critical part of our economy. You know, if a woman can't afford or can't find a place to keep her child, and it's just very likely that she would be the one that would bear the burden. That is how that has happened, at least in 2020. We have a lot of women who've stepped back and taken some really big economic hits because of the pandemic. So anyway, I agree. This is a terrific presentation, and I thank you all for it.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you, ma'am. Great presentation. Wonderful.
Thank
A
you.
couple of things that my colleagues had talked about. The first questions I have, though, are for Charles. Hey, Charles, I'm keep looking at average wage of 56,000. And if there are only a handful less than 40,000, I'm trying to figure out the math on that. Is there a spread?
So
What's the median? You know, that's my thing.
Yeah, I don't know
High
if we have a
executive
median.
salaries can
Yeah,
skew it.
we can pull a median number together. I think some of it is frankly, the company wants to be conservative as far as kind of what this looks like. And the second is because a good chunk of these are sales jobs, right? Part of part of that average wage becomes dependent on their performance and kind of what that looks like. But we can work through a median wage for you.
I would like to have some idea.
Sure.
What's the projected, if you have so many just out of school people, what's the projected turnover rate?
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Malcolm.
My mom would get a hoot out of this last presentation slide, so I'm gonna have to save that one. But I would say our turnover rate is going to be less than, I would say, 8% quarterly. So as we get into it, there will always be attrition in this industry.
Sure.
However, with the recruiting that we're doing, the authentic recruiting that we're doing from colleges, from historically Black colleges and universities, from different career fair events, from one-on-one events like Startup Week we were recently at, we feel confident that turnover won't be an issue moving forward.
Well, there's a certain business economy with having lower end wages and a continual turnover rate.
Of course.
And where I'm coming from here is what my colleagues have already mentioned. The Mayor's Council for Women has been looking for several years now on economics relative to women. And my colleagues have already brought up, when we did research maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we found out when we asked what the barriers were for women succeeding, that we didn't hear any glass ceiling conversation, which surprised us. It was transportation, it was childcare, and it was an interesting algorithm that companies do seem to have. I'm not questioning if you have this, but ageism. When women do off-ramping and then on-ramping, again, they're older, and what they find is that companies will say you're overqualified, whatever that means. I think it means that you have to pay more into a pension plan or more into insurance, health insurance. I get it. But the point is that if you're looking for jobs, for all of Chattanooga, it's not just young people that are out of school that probably will give you a fairly big turnover. It's people that are settled and want to work and may have a lot of education, but my sense is that oftentimes they're not included because they may not be as easily part of the team. What are your thoughts about that?
That's a great question. And, just to make it known, I mean, what's so unique about STEAM is that our youngest employee is 20 years old. Our oldest is 64. So Mr. Mike, he daps me up in the hallway like we're best friends, which we are sometimes. So,
And what does he do?
he does collections. He's a manager of that department. And
So I'd like to see maybe a spread of that as
Of course.
well, because I think Chattanooga is great about addressing the needs of all Chattanooga.
definitely.
And we seem to have some preconceived notions, and I would hate for that. A notion that all our people are young and don't have babies won't last very long unless you're anticipating a turnover, right?
No, I completely
So
understand.
it's future thinking as well. So thank you very much for that. Let
Thank you,
me ask
Councilwoman.
you this, and I guess this is another Charles question. Charles, the hit to the tax budget is $500,000.
Yeah, that's the amount of taxes abated over the 9-year period. That's correct.
Wait a minute, say that again.
It's $502,000 is the portion of taxes that are abated.
Abated.
Yeah, over that 9 years.
So it's hitting us for $500,000 over that, and that's it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And as far as, let me use the word trickle down. So when you're talking about working with contractors, I would hope that the agreements include all efforts, and I think I heard this, I just want to make sure that all the efforts are even, what you include is the people that are painting the building, redoing the building, all of that is there's an effort to include people who service the building at all levels as well. I heard that,
Yeah,
correct?
there's one of the community benefits sections is specific to kind of endeavoring basically to hire local contractors and local workers. And so that for us, like as the Chamber of Commerce guy, right, we want all the money to stay here. I'm very selfish. So my goal is that it all stays in Chattanooga. That's not realistic, right? I mean, money does leak out of an
I know.
economy. But I think that from a company perspective, this project, I think has a pretty strong potential to keep a lot of those funds local.
Okay, my last question, and it has to do with the but-for test. If we don't do this, then it's your understanding that the company will either expand in Birmingham or somewhere else?
I think there's a couple of things that happen. Frankly, if the city council ended up deciding not to move forward with this. So first of all, I would say it's probably unlikely that building redevelops anytime in the near future. So even if the company decided to go into existing space in the market, you wouldn't see a new property tax bump because they would go into existing space.
Mhm.
So there'd be no new revenue stream. I mean,
Okay.
except for a little bit of personal property. So that'd be the first thing I'd say.
Yeah,
The second is this is a high growth company. If they don't have room to grow here, they will grow wherever they can.
okay.
And so everything we can do to keep them growing in Chattanooga and giving them that platform is critical. So I think absolutely at least some of those jobs end up having to go to Minneapolis or Birmingham, just from a growth standpoint and kind of what they've got to do to manage that.
Okay, good answer. Well, I don't have any other questions, but I would like to see that wage spread because with an average of 56,000, I'd rather see averages. You can do anything with averages. I don't like them. I want to see, you and I have had this
We can pull that
discussion.
data, yes.
All right. So if I could see the spread, I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Chairman Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jermaine, so the administration sort of has the privilege of sitting back and supporting a project like this. We sort of have the burden and have to defend a vote. And when we go to neighborhood associations, and many of my colleagues have hit on this, Councilwoman Dotley hit on it at the very beginning. I have to go to a neighborhood association and I've just raised their taxes, but now I'm forgiving or abating, their, this company's taxes. And it's my understanding that the total cost is $500. So basically what we are doing is buying something for $500,000, right?
Yes.
I could tell them that we're buying some jobs, but we have a bunch of unfilled jobs in Chattanooga right now.
Correct.
I think that would be a hard sell for me right now to try to explain that.
Sure.
I could try to tell them that we're getting a new shiny building downtown,
Yes.
but in my neck of the woods, that doesn't really hit home either.
Sure.
So what would you say I could say at a neighborhood meeting for the $500,000 that the city is buying this pilot, basically? What is the average citizen getting for their $500,000?
Well, I would say that the average citizen is getting a significant investment in the community. You could say to the neighborhood association, we cannot do it, and we cannot get the additional tax revenue that's going to come. And that not having that additional tax revenue means that there are other services that don't get paid for in the future. So we are increasing the amount of tax revenue that we get as a result of doing the pilot. Now, I understand that that would be difficult for some in neighborhood associations to potentially understand, but everything that we do, no matter whether we pay for a road or whether we do a pilot, everything that we do is an investment into the community. And so we believe that this is the type of investment that we should make. Charles and I have both shown the slides that show the overall tax revenue. The fact of the matter is that we get much more revenue by doing the pilot and by having this company here. The jobs that you referenced, there are over 9,000 jobs that are unfilled in Chattanooga, but those jobs have a median wage of $31,000 a year. Now, $31,000 a year is great for someone who needs $31,000 a year, but it is well below the median wage for the community and the average wage for the community. And so if we can have an opportunity to create more higher paying jobs that provide a living wage, then I believe that we should do that.
Okay, so one of the things, and I think it was in Charles's presentation, we had a chart in here that sort of broke down what we would continue to collect and then over
Yes.
the period, what we will collect.
Yes.
I would like to see a chart that would be side by side with what would that chart look like if there were no pilot.
Right.
And basically the difference in the numbers. In other words, I think what I'm hearing you say is we're going to collect more money in the end with the pilot than without the pilot.
No, what I'm saying is that if we don't do the pilot, we don't get the expansion. And so if the
Okay,
options are
that is
between
that
choice,
is the assumption that we
yes,
don't do that.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So let me, and here again, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but look, I get put on the spot and I have
Sure.
to defend a vote every
Sure.
time I take a vote.
Absolutely.
So this is a company that's expanding. They're bringing in jobs. They're currently in Chattanooga. We had, and if I need to be specific, I can, but we had maybe 2 years ago,
Yes.
and you probably know
Yes.
which one it is. The county went with the pilot.
Yes.
We chose not to. That was a company that was here locally.
Yes.
They were expanding,
Yes.
but we chose not to give them a pilot,
Correct.
offer them one. What's the difference? How do I explain why this company gets one, that company did not get one?
The jobs that are being created in this pilot are significantly higher than the company that you're referring to. The wages that are being created in this pilot are significantly higher than the company that you're referring to. And we believed, and the chamber believed, that there was a significant, we did not believe that the company that you're referring to met the but-for requirement. We believed that expansion was likely to happen in Chattanooga strategically because that company did not have the room to expand in the other location that they were looking at. If memory serves me correctly, the pilot that you're referring to was about 150 jobs. If memory serves me correctly, we got 400 here.
So that tells me that when we look at job pilots, then I'm assuming that we're looking at a certain threshold of jobs.
Yes.
And what threshold is that?
Well, the threshold changes depending on what the wages are and what the capital investment is. So it is a moving target, but it all sort of works together in terms of the way that we evaluate it with the matrix that we have.
So pilots really should be an incentive, not a reward. And, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what are we incentivizing? What is it that we're looking at? Is it the increased wages? Is it the jobs numbers? Because like I say, right now, and I know we can't be short-sighted.
Yes.
I would hope wouldn't last too much longer. It's killing all of us.
Sure.
What is it that we're targeting? I mean, to me, pilots should be about game changers.
Sure.
Volkswagen is a game changer. To me, Pure Graphite was a game changer. Keeping Coca-Cola in town is a game changer. What's the game changer here that I could explain in a neighborhood meeting? What's the game changer here?
We believe that having a company that is part of our logistics industry, which is a strong and thriving industry in Chattanooga, creating 400 jobs to add to their 350 or 400 jobs that they already have, is a game-changing experience. It is the largest job announcement since Volkswagen and Amazon. So that's what we believe is a game changer. Having a new national headquarters downtown, we believe is a game changer for the community, especially when the average wages are $56,000 per year.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good, Chairman? You
I'm
good?
good. Thank you.
Vice Chair Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Jermaine, I'm surprised there was much room or much air in the room left after your presentation today. There was a lot more than I expected, I must say. I'm going to go one step further than Councilman Ledford and say it was the best pilot presentation that I've seen in my time. Not just kind of, not just a little, not just one of, but definitely the best. And I didn't feel like you left a whole lot of room for anybody else. So that's a good thing.
Thank you.
And I very much appreciate all the work that went into this. There was a lot to do. You had an idea of what kind of questions were coming your way and you answered them ahead of time. Very much appreciate that as well. Knowing just a teeny tiny bit about this industry, I will go ahead and say that when it comes to wages, when it comes to is this white collar, is this black, white, man, woman, young, old, this profession and this industry serves all of the above. And it is the only industry that I know of that you can walk in the door without a college degree and little to no experience and make six figures if you're ambitious enough and you're good enough and you put in the time. There's very few opportunities like that in any other industry I've ever known. And I've known people to do that of all ages, of all races, of gender, didn't matter. I've seen the success that this industry can provide to people. So I'm very excited about it. I've known STEAM for years. I love the fact that they're choosing to expand here. They certainly do not have to. I don't know why you would ever want to go anywhere else, but you certainly don't have to expand here. I have a question. I may have a few, but I have one in particular for Mr. Phillips, if you wouldn't mind. Hey, Todd, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
More so, I appreciate your involvement in this particular project. So I've been through this building many times. I've looked at redeveloping it with other companies. Always falls through. Time after time after time after time. It has immense challenges in this particular building. What is your confidence level that if this pilot goes through for STEAM, that there will be any issues with you making good on the deal and getting this building renovated? Because I want to see it. I've been wanting to see it for years. And it's been awful to see it fall through over and over and over again.
Yes, good question. We were involved a few times on the side when other companies try to get this development done. It's hard to explain. My background's not in construction, but it is 10 times more difficult to get this building retrofitted to house employees versus building a building from raw land and scratch. It's extremely difficult. We purposely have already spent a lot of money not knowing whether this pilot would go through or not on the due diligence. There are environmental problems there that we do have to go put this into a brownfield. We have been working with general contractors, all local. We believe we have our pricing. We believe we know at this point. We had something come up the other day with structural integrity on some of the pillars. We've worked through that with the engineers. So we are confident that pending these issues here locally with the local government, that we will be able to move forward.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Perfect.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, Jermaine.
Yes, sir.
So much of this presentation has been not just about jobs, salaries, things of that nature, but also the tax benefits. So when we hear a pilot and then we talk about what we're forgiving is future revenue.
Right.
A lot of people get confused and think we're cutting a check.
Correct.
Talk about VW.
We
This is not.
cutting a
Anywhere
check.
near the same thing as one of
Yes.
those. This is
Correct.
all future revenue. That is not costing the city anything. As a matter of fact, as you stated, starting in year 2, there will be additional revenue coming into the city by moving forward. And it's not just about the expansion of STEAM coming here. It is about moving into this building
That's
that
right.
actually impacts what this pilot is about.
That is correct.
If STEAM chose not to move into this building, what happens?
If STEAM chose not to move into this building, let's say that they decided to lease vacant office space at Unum or Blue Cross Blue Shield, which both have vacant office space because a number of their employees now work from home as a result of the pandemic. Well, then that fundamentally negates the pilot. So they don't get a pilot from us. There's also no additional property tax revenue that the city gets because, as Charles mentioned, there are no improvements to a building that are happening. Unum and Blue Cross Blue Shield have, they pay their own property taxes. And so they would just potentially be a tenant someplace else. And they would also push some of those jobs to other cities. So to answer, to go back to Charles's point, we do believe that at the rate that they are growing, they will create some jobs here in Chattanooga, but they will also push jobs to other cities because they'll have to, because they'll need room to accommodate all of the employees that they're hiring.
So it'll be fair to say that if this should pass,
Yes,
we as a city are not at risk of losing anything
that is
other
correct.
than the growth.
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chairman Henderson.
Thank you, man. I've got one follow-up question. Jermaine,
Yes.
We talk about $115 million impact, and we've actually discussed this before, Charles. I don't remember, and this council could correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've ever seen a report back some years after the pilot has taken effect, showing us
The
here
economic
is the
impact.
return on our investment.
Sure.
And I really would like to see that.
Yeah.
So that we can start taking this to our neighborhood association, and say, we invested 500,000, here is a hard number of what we got. I know some of these numbers are a little soft and illusory, but I think there should be some hard data that we can share
Yes.
with this council to say, this is the result of it.
We can work on that. We can get that done. We have about 20 active pilots. So we could start to, if there are, obviously there's a cost that comes with doing these economic analysis, but we could start to work on those. We would probably start with the larger projects or the ones that are the oldest, the ones that have been around the longest, so that we could look at the economic impact because we have a long window of time that we could look at.
You've got some money to find, don't you, that you can do that with?
I'm sure we do. I'm just
I-
going to talk to Mr. Goldberg.
I would think so. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Jermaine, for the great presentation. Most definitely. Mr. Charles, you said something that I've never heard before, that it's taking care of our chickens so that we would not be somewhere, they will not become someone else's chickens for dinner. I like the way that you worded it. I like that it goes beyond Malcolm X's statement of the chickens coming home to roost. And why I say that is that you're in this, what I take from what you said is that when you're addressing barriers of all Chattanoogans, the game changer that I would say is that, if we reduce with the $56,000, reducing absolute poverty and relative poverty. And we're talking about One Chattanooga, the mayor's mission. His main objective for Chattanooga is to be on one accord and also to help Blacks move into a middle class. And it's the first company that I've seen to come that's asking for a pilot to say, we want to be intentional about hiring people of color. That's the game changer. Because for so long through our history, we've been afraid to say that we most definitely want to concentrate on this group of people, this population of people, and help them elevate upward mobility. So thank you for that. So speaking of barriers, I just have a couple of questions. I know we talked a lot about childcare. But we're talking about the criminal justice system, and that's also a barrier for people, and specifically Black people that have background challenges. What are your thoughts around employing people with those challenges at your workforce?
That's a great question, and I'm all for it, honestly. Just being able to provide everyone an equal opportunity to be successful. Myself, I've had several family members in Hamilton County be in that same system, and I'm in this courtroom right now in front of you, speaking with you in terms of providing people that look like me opportunities. And had they had that same conversation on their behalf, they would be in a better position for me and my family today. So I'm all for, having that discussion and opening up that opportunity with somebody with prior convictions. And, people do make mistakes. every single day people make mistakes, but your mistakes don't define you. How you actually turn that mistake into a testimony then defines you in the future moving forward. So we're all for it. And, being here and recruiting and being on the forefront of this, we will definitely do this and lead this in this manner. So that's a great question.
Thank you.
Just not to hide behind Malcolm, given that answer, I
Mhm.
just want to say I agree with everything you just said, so.
Well, on that note, I'll end on, I'm very supportive of this pilot. However, that I will be excusing myself from the vote because of personal connections with Steam Logistics. I in no way want anybody to feel as if, as a council person, that I've manipulated anything towards this. But I did wanted to mention on the record that I do support it 100%. And Jason, I'm gonna take you up on your offer to come visit. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, well, we'll adjourn till 6. We got a target on. All right, clear the